Hi, guys. I'm Steve Waterhouse, or Seven, from Orchid, CEO, co-founder of this company. I'm here to talk about something slightly different. So my project is focused on how decentralized technologies can address centralized forms of control. We live in a surveillance world. This is an image of all the different countries in the world that have some form of surveillance. And I've done a lot of traveling over the last few years. I'm from England, and in my country, there are more closed-circuit cameras per person than any other country in the world. And something to think about when you're walking down the street and realizing that you're actually being captured, your face is being recognized, almost everything you do is being monitored at some point in time. And so our vision is, what if the internet can be the last place that you can actually be anonymous? What if the internet can be a place where you can actually have a private conversation without being monitored? This is an image from a province in China, which has such strong surveillance. China put in, it's a Islam province in China. China put in physical security and then technology security. And it's got to the point now where the citizens in this part of China are so conscious of surveillance that they actually act as if they're being surveilled all the time. And if you've ever thought about your communications on Facebook, for example, that's probably something that you should really be thinking about. Interesting side note on this one is that this province in China, the technologies that are there now are actually being exported to other countries in the world to enable those countries to do surveillance. I'm a big art fan. Ai Weiwei is a famous artist from China. He's been locked up a few times in China. And this is an example of sort of fake news. This quote here is actually the Chinese version, the official Chinese version of this sculpture. This sculpture is a sculpture of bicycles. It's the bicycles is the most common way of getting around Shanghai. And his sculpture is meant to represent freedom, the idea that people can get out there and just make change. But it's turned into this, oh, I used to like riding bicycles. So there's all sorts of kinds of censorship and surveillance. I'm also a big sci-fi fan. Ju is the top-selling sci-fi author in China. And his approach has been to basically couch anti-establishment, revolutionary content in a sci-fi novel that's actually pretty hard to understand. The Circle you should read if you're concerned about Facebook. Definitely get into this. So let's get back into technology. So 50 BC, you can go back a long way and talk about encryption, but back then there was rotational ciphers. It's a very simple concept. Fast forward to 1940s, Turing was able to crack the Enigma machine. And if you think that there's some guy in Langley sitting there looking at data and doing signals intelligence on information to figure out, what to do and which drone to strike, that's not how it works. The way this works is that there are guys in the field figuring out who to target. There's people doing kind of basic 007 style stuff, James Bond stuff. This is how actual infiltration works. Signals intelligence is dead. So when you're concerned about overlay networks like we're building and thinking about, are bad people going to use this stuff, that's not how people get things done. The bad guys are already using SMS or some other kind of things, or passing messages around in some kind of obfuscated code. So I'm going to date myself right now. Back in 1989, I was an undergrad at Cambridge, and I got my first email address, and this is what email looked like. But the cool thing about it was actually it was decentralized. And then later it was encrypted. So Phil Zimmerman, back in 1991, he came up with this idea, and he's like, this kind of plain text email thing is kind of weird. So why don't we do something with public key cryptography? He came up with this idea of pretty good privacy. And the interesting part of this, if you're looking at today's regulations in crypto, is that it was fully illegal to export this technology. It was like exporting a nuclear weapon, and you're sitting on an aircraft carrier right now, so you should think about that irony. And I think it is ironic having a crypto conference on an aircraft carrier. And he actually printed it all out and mailed it to Germany, and then they typed it all in, and it was exported. So there's always a way around. Information wants to be free. 2013, Snowden's disclosures, whatever you think about what he did, really woke me up and a lot of people up to what was actually happening in the world, what's actually happening in this country. The country I'm from has even worse treatment of its citizens. We actually have no Bill of Rights in the UK. And forget about Guantanamo Bay, we've done way worse things. But the funny part of this is, if you go to this place find this building in San Francisco. It's just around the corner from South Park, just near the clock tower. This is an NSA listening post. It's well known. It's still there. It has no windows. So kind of getting back into the theme of this conference, decentralization. So my theory is that, and our theory at Orchid is that architecture can change the way you build society. And the society we're building right now is one in which we're very centralized, and the architecture we're using is leading to a form of totalitarian control. That totalitarian control can take the form of sovereign states. It can take the form of companies. The Panopticon was a prison in England, once again England, which had a very interesting architecture where the watcher could see exactly any part of the prison by shining a light into it. And so at any point in time, you had no idea whether you were going to be surveilled or not. So the internet started initially with ARPANET, which was a fundamentally decentralized architecture, actually designed to withstand a nuclear attack. And then we got Facebook and Google. So back in 2001, 2000 or so, 1999, we had Napster. And this is a huge inspiration for me. I actually started a company with some friends doing distributed search in this space. And all the technology that was built during this period of time, whether it was Nutella, BitTorrent, Skype, and Tor, apart from Tor, has gone into the data centers. There's been very few consumer applications that really leverage that technology until we got the blockchain. And then we see this explosion of interest in this space. So our project is called the Orchid Protocol. We're building, how do I go back? Okay. Essentially what we're building is an overlay network. So sort of like essentially rebooting the internet using a different technology that was going to give you anti-censorship, anti-surveillance. We're starting with access. So our first product will be essentially a VPN alternative. Although instead of trying to build a consumer brand, we'll actually be building integrations into other applications. So your favorite application will suddenly work in an area that it wasn't supposed to work. All these issues around net neutrality will hopefully go away because your ISP just doesn't know what you're doing. From there, we'll move to files, and we'll move to processing as well. So any application can leverage the decentralized components that we're building in order to add in those kind of components and that kind of service. So the way it works is pretty simple. If you've ever looked at layered encryption architectures, like Tor and I2P, it's a very similar architecture. We've upgraded a lot of different components in it. We've solved a lot of problems around denial of service, Sybil attacks, and Eclipse attacks. My team spends all of its time thinking about game theory issues, attack vectors, a lot of the things that many projects in the crypto space aren't thinking about. And just as a side note, Bitcoin or Ethereum is relatively easy to attack right now. We try and think about what's the worst case scenario? What if a government came after us? What if a major company came after us? How would we protect ourselves against those things? The interesting part of this thing and distinction is all of the nodes that are relaying traffic and encrypting and anonymizing them are paid through the system. So it's a form of mining, if you like. So anyone in this room could download our software, run it at home. We're also working on other devices that you could buy and stick in your home, perhaps connected to your Wi-Fi router, for example. And you can be routing traffic and getting paid in the cryptocurrency that's part of our project. We started last year. Some of my co-founders include one of the core architects of the Ethereum security framework, the inventor and the guy who ran Cydia, which is the jailbreak for the iPhone, and was first employee of the Free Software Foundation. So it's Gustav Simonson, Jay Freeman, and Brian Fox. So we have a very interesting team. We've raised some money last year from some notable VCs, including Sequoia, Andreessen, DFJ, Polychain, Metastable. If you're interested in talking to me about any of our progress, I'll be around for a little while, and I'm relatively easy to get in touch with. We have a private alpha release already, and we're launching a public beta this year or maybe next, but most likely this year. I'd like to finish with a little bit of a lighter note. I guess it's a lighter note, at least a cultural note. Charlie Chaplin did this amazing movie in mid-century around the wartime, and there's this incredible speech. It's worth listening to. The way he speaks it is just powerful and dynamic. And I think it's very relevant for today when you think about the kind of administrations, the kind of companies that we're building, and the kind of world that we could build. That's me. Easy to get in touch with. Drop me a line anytime. Thank you.